In the vast and immeasurable weave of the Marvel multiverse, there are truths so fundamental they defy comprehension. Cosmic laws etched into the very lattice of existence, authored not by hands but by inevitability. Within this grand tapestry, few entities hold meaning beyond the stars, but among them, two forces stand as architects of what is and what could be: the Living Tribunal, arbiter of multiversal balance, and the Celestials, grand experimenters and architects of cosmic evolution. Their paths, eternally parallel, were never meant to intersect in war, until now. It began with a silence, a cosmic lull after the fracturing of countless universes. The multiverse trembled in the aftermath of the incursion crisis, the scars of the Beyonders' rampage still fresh. In their absence, the cosmic equilibrium wavered, and the endless processes of rebirth and decay spun dangerously off course. Entire universes blinked into non-existence without judgment. Others mutated unnaturally, spawning abominations and existential paradoxes. Something was broken, not in the physics of reality, but in its intention. From the forge of infinity, deep within the heart of the superflow, the Celestials convened once more. They arrived not as individuals, but as hosts: Arishem the judge, Exitar the exterminator, Tiamut the communicator, Nazar the calculator, and Oneg the prober. The fourth host, more ancient than imagination, spoke in unity. Balance has failed. The mechanism of judgment is corrupted. We must become what was once forbidden. Arishem, standing a head above his kin, lifted his hand toward the cosmic void. The Living Tribunal no longer defines order. His silence is complicity. Exitar's eyes, white suns within a skull of stardust, glowed in agreement. Then we shall redefine order. For eons, the Celestials had tolerated the Tribunal's reign, grudging respect masking latent defiance. The Tribunal was never a creator. He was a constant. He passed no genesis, birthed no stars. He judged, and the Celestials, grand architects of species and civilization, resented that judgment. In their view, evolution was above morality. To prune a galaxy so another might flourish, that was not cruelty, it was necessity. Yet in the Tribunal's tri-faced gaze, such logic was flawed. For the Living Tribunal did not see creation as the Celestials did. To him, the multiverse was a singular equation with infinite balancing terms. Good and evil were not variables, but consequences. Chaos and order, progress and stagnation. These he measured not in morality, but in harmony. And harmony had begun to unravel. From within the axis of null time, the Living Tribunal stirred. Three faces turned to address the awakening multiverse. The face of vengeance flared with celestial fire. The face of necessity remained cold, immutable. And the face of equity, always the calmest, regarded the actions of the Celestials with solemn understanding. A fissure had formed not in reality, but in purpose. The Celestials were not acting in rebellion. They were acting out of belief. They believed they could take the Tribunal's place. And so, from the firmament, the Tribunal summoned the primordial balance, a sphere containing the first equation of the multiverse. Its light dimmed, unbalanced by countless breaches across the dimensional threads. Even eternity wept under the strain. The Tribunal had not intervened during the Beyonders' genocide, nor when the Time Variance Authority collapsed into disarray. But now a more insidious threat emerged, not destruction, but redefinition. The Celestials sought to overwrite the very metrics of order. To them, balance must adapt. Evolution must be allowed to bend the rule of law. To them, the Tribunal's lack of creation was weakness, and so the paradox sharpened. In the world heart of the celestial confluence, Arishem raised the celestial mandate, a codex of reality forged in the primordial flame. Within its glyphs were the rewritten laws of Genesis, a declaration that the Celestials would now pass judgment, redefine the worth of entire cosmic systems, and move unopposed. Galactus, once their equal in cosmic scale, had been lured into a passive slumber through a manipulative alliance with the dreaming Celestial. The Phoenix Force had been locked in temporal recursion, and Eternity himself, weakened, dared not intervene. Nothing now stood between the Celestials and their ascendancy. except one. The tribunal arrived not in a ship, nor with legions, but as inevitability itself. His three faces cast down rays of truth across the confluence. No sound, no threat, only presence. You seek to define purpose, and in doing so, you fracture balance, he said, his voice reverberating across every plane of existence. You assume that evolution is the same as justification. It is not. Tiamut, his thoughts encoded in bursts of gravitational language, replied, "If order stagnates, then evolution becomes heresy. Is this balance? A lifeless equation guarded by an entity who never creates, only destroys?" The tribunal did not flinch. "I destroy only the imbalance that defies the equation. Your intent, while noble, corrupts causality. You would replace the impartial with the passionate. You would become law not by right, but by will." Nizar the calculator projected a lattice of probability, futures in which the Celestials led the multiverse into golden ages. In several million possible outcomes, prosperity reigned. Species rose. Conflict declined. But the tribunal's reply cut through every branch. A million prosperous futures forged through singular intent are still tyranny. Balance is not prosperity. It is potential. It is choice. Then spoke Arishem, his voice rare and heavy. "Then we are irreconcilable, for you guard stasis while we forge progress." The tribunal's central face turned, and for the first time his voice darkened. "You seek progress without permission, without challenge. You have declared yourselves judge, jury, and architect, but only one judgment holds across the multiverse." And in that instant, the lines were drawn, not in wrath but in philosophy. This would not be a battle of strength alone. It would be a war of ideals, a reckoning between those who believed power could guide destiny and one who stood as the fulcrum upon which all destinies must balance. And so, beneath the Watcher's gaze and across every universe echoing the silent tension, the tribunal extended his threefold hand. "Then let balance be tested." As his robes of starlight unfurled and time slowed to a crawl, the Celestials rose as one, titanic and implacable. The hosts ignited their cosmic furnaces, the mandate burned like a newborn star, and the forge of eternity cracked under their gathering might. Across dimensions, beings fled or fell to their knees, and in the silence between seconds, the multiverse held its breath. Chapter 2 would not simply be a battle, it would be judgment. The moment the tribunal raised his hand, reality itself became suspended in a state of potentiality. No law yet passed, no force yet acted. It was the stillness before the fall, the breath before the collapse of all certainty. The Celestials moved first, not out of haste or pride, but according to calculation. In unison, the hosts aligned across dimensions, their presence stretching through the membranes of alternate realities. Arishem's form alone towered over galaxies. His hand could reach across a nebulae and stir the dust of dying stars. Yet as they advanced, they moved as one organism. The mandate, that codex of rewritten cosmic law, pulsed in Arishem's palm, sending signals through the collective will. Each celestial, though ancient and godlike in isolation, was now an appendage of a single, coordinated intent. Replace the old axis with the new. Tiamut struck first, not with a weapon, but with a cosmic waveform that sought to collapse the tribunal's essence into a fixed point in time. It was an existential override, a command for the tribunal to become measurable. If successful, the tribunal would be locked within a single plane, a single universe, stripped of multiversal scope. But the tribunal did not resist physically. His vengeance face opened, radiating unfiltered truth. The waveform bent, then shattered. Time itself rejected the command, bending backward and forward in irregular pulses. What the Celestials failed to comprehend was that the tribunal did not occupy time. He enforced it. The moment they attempted to reduce his essence, they only exposed themselves to the very foundation of his existence. Nizar, observing the failure, responded by unleashing the probability cannon, an entropic device capable of rewriting outcomes. It did not fire projectiles, it fired potentialities. possibilities that destabilize certainty. Entire zones of space flickered, collapsed and reformed. One blast altered the spin of a star cluster 20 billion light-years away. Another dissolved an entire galactic arm into mathematical abstractions, and yet the tribunal did not dodge. Each probability wave crashed against him and dispersed like water, striking an immovable cliff. In his presence, causality obeyed a higher law. The tribunal did not exist within probability. Probability existed within him. Still, the Celestials were not deterred. Exitar summoned the axis reversal, a temporal inversion field that aged cosmic structures into heat death in microseconds. Even Galactus had once retreated from its effect. The tribunal raised his hand, not to stop it, but to observe it. The field struck him and dispersed harmlessly across his cloak of woven stardust. Where it touched him, it aged itself into nothing. The tribunal, being outside time's narrative, could not be rewritten by time's decay. Seeing that metaphysical entrapment and conceptual manipulation failed, the Celestials turned to direct destruction. Arishem launched the Celestial Mandate at full force. The Codex, burning with rewriting protocols, sliced through the void like a second Big Bang. It tore apart dimensions as it traveled, unraveling the very syntax of reality. The tribunal allowed it to strike him, and then he spoke. Not with sound, but with purpose. I do not fear the rewriting of law. I am the law. The mandate exploded on impact, not as fire or light, but as language. Its glyphs disassembled into syllables of pure thought, and those syllables were judged. One by one, the tribunal nullified each. Some were deemed arrogant, others naive. A few, dangerously close to true balance, were preserved, but the rest, he silenced. That was when the Celestials realized the truth of their error. The tribunal was not an enemy. He was not even a combatant. He was the standard. To defeat him would not merely require more power, it would require a superior understanding of purpose itself. Their failure had never been tactical, it had been philosophical. But they pressed on. The hosts formed the celestial configuration, a structure older than language, a formation said to summon the heart of the first firmament. As the geometry unfolded, existence buckled. Universes within the formation began to realign, to bind together. The Celestials channeled that energy into a single blow, one capable of eliminating the tribunal's conceptual root from the multiverse. And for a moment, everything went dark. The tribunal stood still. Then he raised all three faces. From the face of necessity, he spoke. There must be balance. From the face of vengeance, there must be consequence. From the face of equity, there must be judgment. He raised both hands, and from them emerged the scales of infinity. Unlike any weapon, the scales were not forged. They had always existed from the moment duality first formed, light and dark, good and evil, action and inaction. Into one end of the scales, he placed the Celestials' intent, their desire to redefine cosmic order, to elevate evolution over balance. Into the other, he placed the weight of the multiverse's potential, should balance remain intact. And the scales tipped, not by power nor fear, but by truth. The Celestials' collective will, when weighed against the multiverse's autonomy, was found wanting. Not evil, not vile, but insufficient. They had acted without consent, without variance, without allowance for chaos. In their desire to refine the cosmos, they had strangled its right to be unpredictable. In that moment, the tribunal judged. Reality inverted around the hosts, not in violence but in erasure. Not one celestial died. No scream was heard. They were unwritten, returned to their source equations, reabsorbed into the cosmic fold. Arishem, the last to vanish, locked eyes with the tribunal as if to say, "We tried." The tribunal's faces regarded him not in hatred, but in sorrow. "You did." And then the battle was over. No cities burned. No planets screamed. No monuments marked the location. Only a ripple across the fabric of creation, an acknowledgement that once, even gods tried to overreach the law. The tribunal stood alone, as he always had, as he always would. His judgment was not revenge. It was not dominance. It was necessity. And as his cloak of light wrapped back around his form and he vanished into the higher void, one truth remained clear. In a multiverse ruled by chaos, choice, and contradiction, balance must not be perfect, but it must be maintained. The Celestials sought to evolve the code. The Tribunal was the code, and so he won, not by overpowering, but by being inevitable.